Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode. Today, I have a very special guest on, my friend, Nikki Novo. We've been long distance friends until today, and now we finally met in person, and we just feel like we know each other for so long. She is incredible. We connected, and we both did an exchange of services. So I gave her a one-on-one meditation that she really loved, and then she gave me a reading which I really loved. And we're just like, oh my gosh, we thought the world of each other. And I was so excited for her to come on because she, shortly after I met her, I also joined her course, which was Soul Led Living. No, I'm lying. That's her podcast. It's Soul Reading Method. So Soul Led Living is her podcast that I listen to every week. It's incredible. She literally sits down with these questions that she asks her guides and shares the messages that come through. And I think they're wonderful. I love her and her podcast. And then I did Soul Reading Method with her. And this helped me to really just organize the information I get and the intuition I get and be able to have more of a formula. And I just love learning from her. You know, it's from a place of light and of truth. And when you meet her in this episode, you're going to know. You're just going to like feel why I adore her so much. So in this episode, we talk about so many things. Life as an intuitive, starting how she got started, how she woke up to her gifts, even going through addiction with a partner, being able to recognize fear versus intuition, protection practices, so many things were covered, and it's such a deep and rich conversation. I hope that you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you on the other side. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so grateful to be in person with you. And like you said before, it feels like we really know each other, even though this is the first time we're meeting in person.
Well, I remember the first time I did the breathwork session with you, and unfortunately, like, my intuition is like just turned on the whole time, all the time. And like, even if I don't wanted to. And I remember I was like trying to receive from the session because it was such an amazing session, but I couldn't help but be like, this person is the real deal. Like, you just, I don't know, in our space, and there's so many different people that, you know, do different types of work. And sometimes it's not that some people are not the real deal and sometimes people are not. It's just that, like, I just recognized you. I was like, oh, like, I know her. And I remember like even like having a vision of you. I was like, I wonder if we like know each other from another time or something. But it was just like an instant connection. You were just such the real deal. And that's why like I love your work. So I'm so grateful to be here.
Thank you. And I felt that about you the first time we had our session together, where I was receiving and you were sharing your intuitive gifts. I was truly blown away by what you were able to know about like my husband, because it was things that's when I was like, okay, like she knows a lot, because it was things that I've never shared on Instagram, things about family and business and just things that no one would know unless you were psychic and intuitive.
That's so funny. Yeah. I don't remember, I don't remember my readings, and I think that's like on purpose because it like protects me in a sense. Like I don't remember a lot of the information that I give out, but the minute you start talking to me, I remember it as you start to talk to me about it. And it's just so funny because like I feel like when you're doing intuitive readings, sometimes spirit does like little, like gives you some stuff that is to create that trust, you know, because the idea is that like, you know, the person has to be able to trust like what's coming through. And sometimes it's those like odd little things that don't really have anything to do with you, but they have something to do with like somebody else in your family that really like grounds in the reading. So now I'm totally remembering your husband.
And that makes sense that it's through someone else, because when it's you, there's so much attached to that.
Right.
But when it's someone else, you're able to make that connection.
I think the so work that easily. We do, right? Like we're online, and like, you know, if I really wanted to stalk you, I probably could get a lot of that information.
But not that information, not the information you had, and that's what really stood out because you couldn't have.
Oh my God.
It was so amazing. But I'm so excited to connect. I love talking to other spiritual teachers, and especially since I feel so connected to you. We like voice note each other, we DM, but we've never been in the same actual physical space, and it feels so nice.
I know. I actually have been putting off a New York trip for a while. Like there has been like a few options to come. like over the last year or so, and I had kept putting it off. TikTok does not make New York look good.
Really?
Honestly.
What's going on?
My like conspiracy theory husband, like he's like, look at New York.
Yeah.
Look at, I don't know. It's like
New
probably
York
what they
City
say
in
about
particular,
Miami.
right?
I would
Yeah.
say, like, so I'm growing up in Miami. We used to get those things all the time. And then finally I was like, no, I have to go. I have to see like certain people, but you were one of the people on my list. I was like, I like need to meet Erica in person.
So grateful.
So excited to
and
be here.
honored.
Yeah.
Yes. How did you know you were intuitive? When was the first moment you realized that you had this gift?
Yeah, I wasn't one of those kids that like was predicting or like the grandfather dying or that I had a conversation. As I've taught so many people intuition, I've realized that is like a story for some people. Like some people really like recognize when they're little. I grew up in a super Catholic household. My parents are Cuban and my mom is just a typical Cuban like Catholic mom. And I joke that if I would have shown like any signs of having any sort of intuition, she would have definitely sent me to like what we call like a despojo. Like she would have found some sort of like priest or something to like take the demons out of me. So I think like my little soul self like knew like, we don't want to pull that card in this house. It's just not going to work out for you. So so I didn't show any signs. And then, I took a very typical, I studied communications. I was a publicist in the film industry. So I lived in LA and I worked in film. I really fell in love with writing once I was there. And then I switched my career to be an editor. So I was a fashion and beauty editor. I went back to Miami, did all that. And honestly, I was like loving that trajectory that I was on. Like I was happy. I actually here in New York, I'm visiting some of my friends from that old career that they just like have worked their way up to the corporate ladder and they have like these high positions in media. And that's really like the track I was on and I was happy with it. But during that time, blogging started and I was like looking for like a creative outlet. And I had a boyfriend at the time who like actually set me up on my first blog. And that little like creative outlet gave me like this space to talk about the things I was actually interested in. I didn't even know how interested I was in like self-help, personal development, spirituality until I was like given that blog. So it was kind of a weird process of like being interested in reading, like consuming all these like self-help spiritual books. I was really just trying to heal myself from like my own stuff. And then that boyfriend who like was really encouraging creatively, like he grew up in a creative family. I grew up in a very I come from a family of doctors, so and also immigrants. So like creativity is very low on the ladder, of what's important. So I was never, I think that part of the reason I joke about like why my gifts weren't seen earlier, but I think a lot of it was because my gifts were not valued in the home that I grew up in. Not on purpose, because my parents are also very creative people. My dad actually went to NYU and did like 2 years of film school. And my mom, being like the tough Cuban woman that she is, she was like, that film stuff is like super cute, but that's like not for us. Like we are broke. We have no money. Like you cannot try to be a filmmaker. You have to be a doctor. And he was like, damn, I guess she's right. So he like left film school and went into medical school truly because like they were immigrants. Like they came here with nothing. And like film school was just like, it was like for privileged people. It's kind of like the way she was positioning it. And becoming that doctor really is like kind of what pulled us out of poverty and like gave us like the life that, that my brothers and I really got to enjoy. So in that house, I felt very ungifted and like untalented, if that makes sense, because there was a very high interest on like science and like just the things that are going to make you money, whether it's like an attorney or an accountant, that kind of stuff. So I felt like very lost in that house for a long time. I remember being like jealous of my older brother because he had this picture of him wearing these like little baby medical scrubs, and he was like holding my dad's hand in the picture. And he just like always knew he was going to be a doctor, and he's a doctor today. And for me, I was just like, shit, like I really don't know like what I'm going to do with myself. I feel very ungifted, untalented. So it wasn't until like I gave myself after college a little bit of space to go into writing, first of all. I was like kind of out of my parents' house. I had lived in LA. I was very inspired by like all these creatives who were making money. And I was like, what? Like you can make money like being a creative. And I think writing is so close to channeling at the end of the day. So the beginning of the intuition started as I was writing. Like I was like, why am I writing things that like I don't even feel like I know these things? And the blog was really like the outlet for it. So I think like having those outlets, first of all, are just always like the place where you can like start to discover those gifts and talents. So I'm really grateful for that blog. But then the funny thing, the true catalyst was that guy that started the blog for me, I thought, you know, he was my person, and he breaks up with me. And I was so insulted because he was really one of the people that was like, you can, you know, you can be a creative, you can make money, like, you know, doing what you love or whatever. And if you like spirituality, like go into it. He was really encouraging. And then he breaks up with me. He's like, leaves me in the dust. And I almost felt like the blog was something like as if we were like sharing a dog, and then like he breaks up with me and I got full custody of the dog and I didn't even want the dog. Like I was like upset about this blog. And that breakup like led me to seek out a psychic. Like I needed to know what just happened. Like I really was confused. Like I felt divinely led to him. I felt like I was on path. And when he broke up with me, it was really like life shattering to me in many ways, but it was also what brought me to the psychic. So he was very like such a catalyst, and that psychic like changed my life. I don't know, I just really enjoyed what she was doing. And then at the end of the session I asked her if I could like maybe do what she does, and she said yes. So she introduced me to these like different books, and I started to study, and I think I had like the natural gift, but then I think you always have to take that natural gift that you have and put in like, you know, the time that you know, to exercise it. And that's like where it came from, and I just kind of kept following it.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's almost like he was put in your life to help give birth to all of this.
Yeah, it's very annoying though. When you meet a soulmate, you know, like you want that soulmate to be the person you marry, not the person that gives you the catalyst.
Right.
And I was really like, I really wanted him to be like the soulmate that I married, not the soulmate that like taught me lessons.
Yeah. It hurts while you're in it. And then in hindsight, you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm actually having a very like just this experience in life right now. I'm definitely going through some upgrades and shifts, and I have these thoughts about that where right now things might not make sense, but as you look back, everything eventually I think does or will. But it also like it's freeing when you think of that, but then it's also like, but wait, what is it going to look like in the future, and what will it look like as I look back?
What makes you feel like that right now?
I guess my future, whether it's the work that I'm doing, how I'm sharing it, relationships in my life and what they'll look like. Yeah. And it's just, I don't know, sometimes when you're so aware and you go so deep in just the energy of life, I don't know, you could go on like these little trips in your mind and be like, yeah, I know that one day it will make sense, but what is it going to look like? Or
because you're aware that you're on the journey.
Yeah.
So you're like almost like paying attention to every turn that it takes to see like where it's being guided. But I would say that those time in life is usually like it's that womb space. It's like the space between like the old and the new, or like, you know, the caterpillar, you know, the caterpillar, the cocoon, and the butterfly. And the cocoon, or even like now, you know, I moved out of Miami and I've been living in 30 acres of land for the last 3 years, which has been like a whole new experience because I did not know anything about like nature or land until I moved there. And even like looking at like seeds, for example, you know, like you drop them into this dark soil. Like it's dark for the seed. It's like the baby, you know, like in the womb, like it's just dark. And I think we have the tendency to like want to like open up the soil and like look at the seed to see like what it's doing, you know, but then you're going to like mess it up. Yeah. Like you need creation to take its course. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, you're a creator, so you know you can open up the soil to like look at it, but it's really being able to like drop that seed, like leave it in the dark, and trust that the thing I think what's hard with these like moments in life is that you probably just like don't fully remember when you dropped the seed in, you know, like, but you have to trust that like your manifestations are like taking you down this path. And now it's like time to create. It's like in the darkness to be able to create. And I think, so like using the seed, for example, like when I put the seed in, I have an intention and I'm like, oh, I want you to grow into something. I'm like growing a garden. I was very aware when I put that seed in. You probably just like don't remember what seed actually brought you to this like dark moment,
Yeah.
but it is a manifestation. Like you have to trust that. I think when you manifest enough things in life, which I know both of us have, you start to like pick up on the creative process and you're like, okay, the dark part is the hardest part, the unknown part. But if I go back a little bit, I did set an intention to create a certain type of life. And that's why I'm now in this dark place. So I did this to myself, you know, like you have to be like, every time I do readings on people and like they come with that kind of problem, I'm like, you did this to yourself, like, which I think is empowering because like you have to trust that I set this intention, whether it's like, oh, I want to up-level my work or I want to have kids or whatever. And this is the journey. It's just that when you're in the middle of it, it's really hard to trust. I mean, I think about that with actually this land that I live on. So my husband, we're from Miami. All my kids were born there. And when my middle son was about 2, we started dreaming up about like wanting to buy land, but we thought it would be like more of like a second home. Like we thought we were going to live in Miami because we come from such a tight community. And also my husband's business was like very local. We just like never thought that it would be possible to be able to like fully move from Miami. And we went to go visit North Carolina when my middle one was like about 2 years old. So I guess it was like almost like at this point, like almost 10 years ago. And we were super broke. I could like barely pay my mortgage at the time. I don't even know how we had enough money to go on that trip. So it was like, who the hell were we thinking that we were like going to buy all this land? But we were just dreaming. And Benny's a really big dreamer and manifester as well. And we went to that land. We set the intention. And when I tell you that like 6 months after that, my life just started to like unravel. And I was like, what the shit? To the point that I forgot about like, it's like you don't even have I forgot about manifesting like land at that point because my root system, like if you look at the chakras, like the root of my family, it was like there was just so much to be done. I realized my husband was an addict. Like the business was not working. I had to figure out how to make money. I had to make money in my own business. Like we were in such survival that like dreams did not even matter. But it was so weird that now, like you said, like looking back, now I'm in the land, the story has happened. And I'm like, oh, like everything was aligning. Like things had to be fixed and healed to be able to like get here, which is like thriving business, sober husband, 30 acres of land. Like, and I set that intention, like going to that land years ago and dreaming that up put us on that motherfucking roller coaster. And it's just scary.
It's crazy. I have chills.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So if you're in that place, and of course you're not, God and spirit universe is always going to be more creative than we are. Like I would have never, like the way that it all pans out, I would have never guessed. So we're not going to know all the steps, but I think that if you can have some trust in maybe what you were trying to manifest a year ago, 6 months ago, and kind of think like, maybe what's happening is that manifestation put me on this track. And usually when you're growing a new tree, you have to, like going back to that seed, the root has to be very, very strong. And I think when our root starts to change, relationships, money, the way we make money, our family, those are the things that that really shift the most when you're about to manifest something new, because the trunk has to be strong enough to carry the leaves, So I think that's what scares us.
It's a beautiful message. Everything I needed to receive, of course.
That's what we're here for.
I love it. It's so true. And sometimes you need that mirror of reflection of like knowing that it's safe to trust the process and the darkness. And
I think just be there present for the lesson, It's like, okay, like like you might want to focus on the leaves, let's say, because you're thinking the leaves in my case would have been like the land, the business, whatever. But I had to like in the moment be like, no, I have an alcoholic husband, or I have my business, my husband's business is not making like the amount of money that we needed to make or whatever. Like those are the very earthly things that I don't want anything to do with, because I want to actually dream about the leaves, really. Like that's what I really want to dream about. But I can't get to that dream without respecting what God is like putting in front of me right now. Like it's like those that work and like really having to get your hands dirty and knowing that, and like being present to that, I think. And that goes kind of back to what we were talking about off camera, is like being spiritual, knowing we're on this path, like knowing that we have like these big things to create and like those upper chakra type like visions, but then having to bring it to the ground on the day to day and be like, oh, today's about taxes. Like that, there's nothing more unspiritual than taxes, but like, you're like, today, this is like, and I have to trust that getting really good at this is actually what is giving more space for my spirit to express itself.
Yeah. I feel like you have such a good balance of being in the upper realms, but also being in the earthly realm. Like, I love the funny content, the humorous content you're creating. I live for it.
That's so great.
I love it. It's so great. And just like how you show up, the improvements you make in your business, I feel like you're very resourceful. You are always like looking at how you can present things better. I can just see, like, it looks like you're in this period of like a lot of growth and advancement. And that takes being in the earthly realm at times.
Yes.
To be able to know, like, what resources am I going to use? What tools am I going to use to get there? How do you balance that? And like, being an intuitive, I'm sure you're getting messages. I don't know. How often are you getting messages? Like, tell me, what is it like a day in the life?
You know what's funny? What's very helpful to me is my podcast. So I do Monday.
I love your podcast. I listen to every single episode.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed.
But what's funny is that there are definitely messages for me in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of selfish in a sense. They're not all perfectly I think it's the way I get messages all the time. People are like, why was your reading exactly for me? And I'm like, it's so funny how I always say it's like you're kind of like looking at a spear and there's all these different like angles at it, and that's why it works for so many different people. But definitely the podcast, it helps me like check in on kind of what spirit is asking of me as well. So I am the channel for delivering these messages for so many people, but at the same time they are also guiding me. So that's definitely part of it. I think for me, getting in tune with my own personal signs. So like, unfortunately, frustration is like an energy or an emotion that really like guides me. It's kind of it's a frustrating emotion to have, obviously, but when I'm like frustrated about something, I know that I'm off path or that something is a little bit off, and I'm always like trying to get on path. So I'm okay with like feeling all the different feelings because I know that they're like supportive and helpful. So I am very much like in tune with kind of how I'm feeling about something. And then that like knocks me in. I also, although I love like the work that we do, I also really love an entrepreneurship. I find it to be very creative.
I can tell that you like it.
Yeah.
And you're very good at it.
Yeah. So it's something that like I've just like learned to have fun with, and that like helps as well. And I'm just like interested. I kind of see like what we do almost like being like an athlete, and I'm always like trying to like up level those skills, How can I be a better athlete?
See that. I see it. I'm observing it. I enjoy it too. I think I have to get better at wanting to like be better and like research more. But I think it's really cool that we could enjoy being in that upper realm and that spiritual space, and also find it so fun to be an entrepreneur because that's so much more earthly in a sense. But I can totally see that.
And I try to respect like that my soul. So if our souls chose to be on this planet, like, so if we're going into our spiritual selves and we have this belief that we have a soul's path and we have a soul's contract and there's a soul's purpose, I think that it is like disrespectful to the soul self to try to avoid Earth and to try to avoid Earth things, because at some point, I don't know all the answers, but my soul chose to have this lifetime. And like, I have to trust that soul kind of like knew what it was doing. It was like, oh, we're going to Earth for a reason. I might not have all the answers because I'm like so on the ground, but I always try to like respect the choice that, okay, I have a difficult mom, let's say, or I have a difficult brother or whatever it may be. I'm not trying to like disassociate from that or totally wish that I had another situation. I think one of the most spiritual things we can do is accept and be like, oh, like this is currently where I am. And I trust like the God within me that brought me here. So I play the game. I'm like, okay, you picked Earth. You picked this funny like husband and wife or mother or whatever. this company. So I like to like play by the game. It's kind of like, I just see it as a game.
I love it. I love it. And I was saying off camera too, how I think over the past few years, and maybe that's why I've gone through like an uncomfortable few years, I've had to really root back down into earth because it felt very comfortable being in those higher dimensions and just being in that space. And I was always a person who like, I'm a Libra. I love things to look nice and I love fashion and I love aesthetic. But after I started like really going deep into my spirituality, I was like, that doesn't even matter. Like all that matters is what I'm experiencing
No,
in
but
this
it's
other
fun.
dimension. Yes. And so now I'm like flipping back to like, no, I want to have fun in this earthly realm and I want things to look beautiful. And that doesn't take away from the spiritual connection I have. It actually helps to root me into this realm and this dimension.
You just become more powerful because if you think about the chakras, right? Like, so we're in the upper ones, but the goal, like when manifestation really happens is when like that energy goes all the way down to the root because the root ones are what creates things to be physical. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like you have to respect the physical and have fun with it and like have a lot of fun with like the funny rules that are on earth, like the luxury stuff and the way we eat and all those things are really part of the game on earth. So it's like, I think the soul didn't come here just to like up level and help and support. I think it kind of feels like it's in Disney World a little bit. It's like when in Disney World, like,
It's so true. As a mom, do you get intuitive hits for your children? And are they open to receiving them?
Yeah. And, kids are super intuitive. So that's always fun. I love like even like teaching them some of the intuitive stuff because they do it better than anybody else. I will never forget this like crazy experience I had with my middle son. So I did like a past life regression, which if you guys haven't done, they're super fun. I was trained to do them when I studied hypnotherapy. And somebody was doing a past life on me. And I have this past life regression and I'm like a mom. I have a bunch of kids and like my youngest is like this little weak kid and he had even like a disability or something. It was very like, I didn't think of it too much, but I was working, my son was very young at the time and I was almost treating him, I was like raising him with like white gloves, if that makes sense. Like I thought he was like fragile or something for whatever reason. I don't know why I was acting that way. I think it was just like a reaction to like, it was like my postpartum depression, like really, or my postpartum response was like to be super fragile with like to see this kid as fragile. And at the same time, I'm studying past life regressions. I have this past life regression. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, like I guess Oliver must have had something in a past life and I'm like remembering this and I'm treating him where my other kids, I didn't treat them that way. And there's nothing fragile about Oliver. He's a big kid. He's like the biggest kid in his class. So I kind of just keep that in the back of my mind. And I'm like, okay, this is like some sort of past life thing that's going on. Years later, Oliver's like old enough. He's probably like 6 or 7. And I'm like, he asked me what I did and I told him, I'm like, oh, you want to do a meditation together? Let's do a past life like meditation. I put him into that zone. He jumps into it right away. I mean, like 30 seconds, the kid is there because kids can get there so much quicker.
How old is he at the time?
He's like 6, 7 maybe. And right away he's like, Mom, I'm in a wheelchair and you're with me. My legs, and I'm like, you're freaking kidding me. It was like he was remembering. Yes, it was so bizarre. So even like,
my gosh,
as like earthly that I am, I come from, my parents, my family, like they're all doctors and stuff, but it's like those experiences that happen, like those stories that you're like, you just can't make this stuff up.
Make it up.
So, but I think it's like, what's important is like, okay, how do we get that information from, let's say from a very spiritual experience? It's like past life experience that we're having. And Oliver being able to see that past life, like also helped him remember that he is not fragile. To the point that even in this life, he was like turning in a foot and I had to bring him like a doctor like to help him straighten his foot. And after he like had that past life regression, he kind of just started walking normal, like out of nowhere. And it's kind of just like taking those like spiritual experiences and seeing how can I help that in my like earthly like life. So I do that with the kids. I have a lot of mommy guilt that has been like passed down from my mom. So I am not as like intuitive as I could be with the kids because I'm like the first working mom in my lineage. So that's been like very difficult for me. So sometimes like my guilt kind of clouds some of my intuition. So I usually have to kind of like step away from it in a way that I can get the intuitive information. It's a little harder for me to do it with my kids than I can do it with like other people. But and kids are super fun with intuition. I love like stories of kids that even like they remember their past lives, or they'll tell you intuitive things themselves, or they'll tell you that they see people in colors and stuff. So kids are super fun if you poke them a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's helpful that as moms, if we can be there for them and kind of like not make them feel crazy for seeing that stuff, I think they can stay open longer. Where I think our generation, we kind of had to, if we had any sort of intuition growing up, we turned it off. We were into like the normal world, and then we had to like reclaim it. So I think it's going to be interesting to see like maybe they don't have to like fully reclaim it. Like my daughter is 19 and she knows she's intuitive. Like she can trust that. Like she's not like struggling to find it. She grew up kind of knowing that that was part of her. So I think that's going to be interesting with our kids.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
I've heard that like age 7 was where a lot of people turned it off. And it's also like associated with the changes that go on at that age, going to school and like kind of being brought out of like your flow.
Yes. They say the ego's developing during that time, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I definitely saw that change in Oliver. But then, so my kids are super spread out, but then the oldest has like reclaimed it already. Really so it's like you probably like lose it for a little bit, and then you can reclaim it, I guess, like high school time.
It's really cool. And our environment now is so supportive because people like you and me and so many other spiritual teachers and healers that are sharing this and of course social media, being able to just have anyone access whatever they need, I think will only help people to stay in tune and reclaim it.
You were a teacher. No? Yeah. What grade did you teach?
3rd grade.
Did you ever notice the kids
so open when I would teach them breath work, and they would really utilize it. Like when we would get observed in school, what the administrators really wanted to see was like that embodiment piece. So if I taught them something, they'd be able to take it and then like actually apply it on their own. And specifically with breathwork or meditation or any of these little tools, they were so willing and ready to use them, like so open.
I have goosebumps. It's it's the best because like they don't find it weird if you're teaching it to them at that age. It's so helpful.
They're so open to it, and they didn't feel silly. They really wanted. It was just like another tool to them,
right? And they'll rebel. Like my 19-year-old like is just like just all the things like she has no interest in the food stuff that I try to tell her about or any of these things, but she's like aware of it, and I'm sure she'll circle back. But they'll definitely like rebel. My middle son he's currently like in a space that he like makes fun of me sometimes about it and stuff, like, but very fun and like jokey, so and then they kind of like they'll circle back at some point. So this is normal. They need to be on Earth. They need to like live an earthly experience.
And come to the conclusions on their own. Like for so long I wanted my husband to start a meditation practice for so long. And I finally came to the space of like, maybe he doesn't need it like I need it. Like that's okay. And I respect that. And maybe one day he will come around to it, but it has to come from him,
I think men or just people that maybe don't access spirituality the way that we do, that's like maybe very obvious or whatever. I think that they access it through other things. And I think we have to be okay with like how they access it and like not judge the way that it comes their way, I
totally agree.
But yeah, Benny doesn't really have a practice. Well, funny enough, did you see that? I did a reel of Benny showing me like this breathwork little box that
I didn't see that one.
Oh my God, he was totally not scammed, but he was like totally influenced on TikTok, and he bought like some like who knows from where, some sort of like little box of breathing techniques. And it comes with like little tools or something to like help you breathe. It's the craziest thing ever. And I was like, well, I guess TikTok like got through to him, and like if that's his entry, if that's his entry point, like, I didn't want to tell him that you can like do that for free and that you could just like watch Erica's videos with me, but that's cool.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. It's so true.
So it's like he needed Joe Rogan to like sell him like a TikTok special, and that's how he got it. So
I totally respect any way that it's meant to come in. That's too funny. I know you went through a journey of addiction with him.
Yeah.
And I have a similar journey. Vinny went through addiction as well. It was actually before I had these tools. So I was actually going through a lot of anxiety while he was going through
Were
his
you guys
addiction.
married or dating?
We were engaged.
Okay.
Yeah. And
were you aware? Did you know he had an addiction?
at first, no. Like, I swear I felt bamboozled. Like, I just thought he was really fun and silly. And like, we were having, like, I was drinking a ton then. Like, I was a party girl. So, like, we were both having a ball together.
Yeah.
But then I started to see the signs and I was like, I'm able to, like, go to work on Monday morning and not be influenced every day. And, like, you start to see the signs. And he started to get help, and simultaneously I started to experience a spiritual awakening. Like, I think him needing to take care of himself kind of like forced me to take care of myself. And I also think like the hardship I was going through with him pushed me into places and spaces to like heal. And from there, like, we kind of like both had this spontaneous awakening. And he would be like, oh, I know you don't drink anymore because of me. And I'm like, actually, it's not because of you. It's actually because I finally took the power back over my thoughts and I don't have anxiety and I'm not self-medicating with alcohol. But I'm like, okay, you could think it's because of you. Like, he thought I was just being super supportive, which like I was, but it was something way more internal. So sometimes I'll have people reach out and be like, were you intuitive? Were you meditating when you were you spiritual when you went through this journey with your husband? And honestly, like, I wasn't. I was just learning so much about myself while he was going through his healing process.
So did you guys have your wedding and he was sober?
He was sober at our wedding.
Oh my God, that must have been so difficult for him, or he was okay?
He was okay. He's still like such a fun guy.
Okay.
Like, he doesn't need it.
Good.
He's like always the life of every room he's in.
Okay.
But yeah, he was sober that night. I don't know if I was, but he was. He was for sure. But I'm wondering like how the journey was for you, because you were in this place while you're going through it, right?
The story that you share brings up, like, to me, it's like such an important point, because I think in our stories, right, you're like, these poor women married to these like addicts or whatever. The addict is is always looked at as like the villain, or like they're the ones with the problem. But I think from a spiritual standpoint, if we are all just like playing roles and we're just like on a stage and, Benny's like, hey, I'm going to play the role of the addict and you're going to play the role of this or whatever. I received so much awakening and so much upgrade from Benny's journey.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't. So one of the things that happened with me was that I was definitely an enabler. I did not know he had an addiction. So haha on the super intuitive that gets like, that everybody wants to have a reading with, could not tell that her husband, like the best faker was my husband. Had no idea. We were married, had kids.
That's the scary part too. Like how good they can be at faking and lying.
Good. Yes. And there's a few things, obviously, like you grow up in Miami. We were, grew up partying. I just had no idea that stage continues with you. Like, I just thought like you have a fun time when you're young in your 20s and then you grow up. But that's the difference between addiction and a person that can like, drink or whatever. And in Miami, substance abuse, like, I mean, it's just so part of our lives. Like, you get so used to it. You don't think much about it. Like, there was nothing that in my mind that I'm like, yeah, I met Benny when he was 33 and we were partying at the club, but why would I ever think he's still doing that while, we have kids or something? Yeah. So that was just like being naive and not really knowing what addiction was. I was never educated on addiction. I feel like that is now, thankfully, they do educate kids on addiction and they educate parents on addiction, at least in the schools that my kids are in. So that's really nice. But one thing that was such a blessing with Benny was that I wanted to do this work that I do, but I was like, it took me a really long time to like step into my power, and I would try to do it, but Benny was making money and I had the excuse of like raising my kids and, my husband was making money. So my back was like never up against the wall. But I remember about a year or so before I found out Benny had an addiction, I remember looking at him in the eyes and being like, oh, this person's not well. There was something that told me that he was going to die. Like, I had this like very strong feeling like this guy is not going to die. He's either going to die or he is not going to be able to support. Like, and it was the type of intuition that it wasn't anxiety, because people always ask, oh, what's the difference between like
Yes.
anxiety, fear, and your intuition?
Mhm.
And this is always a perfect example for me, because there was nothing about that message that made me go into fear or anxiety. Where, because you can get an intuitive message that is, bad news, like sad news, bad news, all that kind of stuff. But you'll take it like a champ. You'll just be like, okay, cool. Yeah, like this is truth. And you'll kind of like move forward with it.
Yeah.
And that's how I took that, where as opposed to like an anxious or a fearful message, I always say it's like you're in your head, you like can't think clearly, like you don't even know what steps to take. You keep worrying about it. That is not an intuitive message. That is like, your fears, your worries, worst case scenario. So I get this message and I was like, I need to stop messing around and I need to grow my business. Like this business needs to produce. I have 3 children. If this man can't produce, like then what? Like this is crazy that all my eggs are in this basket. So that year, I just like really took that message and I, by necessity, grew my business.
Mhm.
And that's actually where the readings came from. And that was like where my teachings, like I didn't have the luxury to doubt myself anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think about like from a spiritual standpoint, I'm like, what a smart move by like my soulmate Benny. Like my soulmate Benny is like, man, this girl, like, she's meant to be this teacher and she's not seeing her power. So I'm going to have to like fuck around and just like say I have an addiction and like, give her a catalyst to like actually get her stuff together. So I feel I can both hold my husband, physical. I'm mad at you. You lied to me. This is horrible. You bait and switch. I really felt like he bait and switched me in many ways. But at the same time, respect the soul and be like, touche, like good move, because I needed that. I don't know if Benny continued on like providing and doing what he was doing. And because he was a great, he was a great provider, great husband. He was never like abusive or anything like that, which I think is like why we miss addicts, because you think an addict is bad, but they're usually like very lovely people. But I just don't think if he would have gone through that, I'm not sure if I would have like really shown up and empowered myself. So I'm grateful for it. And I wonder if it's our souls, if we decided to do it that way, even though on a physical plane, it was very painful, to go through it. So I got a ton of upgrade from it. Well, I also stopped drinking out of support, and I've tried to like drink again, because I truly don't have an addiction, but I just don't like it. It doesn't even fit well. And I got my family got this tremendous upgrade from Benny going through this. So I'm grateful for it. I really am.
I love how you see things so objectively. And I feel like maybe your guides bring you that view that you're able to really see, even before how you said like different players and just different characters. Like you're able to have this truly objective view. I think taking your understanding of what's going on in the earthly realm to like the next level.
Yeah, that is definitely my gift, and I think it's what I'm doing in the readings and in the podcast all the time. It's almost like I'm going up an elevator and going down an elevator. So it's like I'm down on the ground in my human life, and then I go up the elevator to like get a better like bird's eye view. So I am constantly doing that in my life as well. Like and I think that is the idea of like I can be spiritual, but then know that it's time to go in my body. Even when we're teaching intuition. So even when you're pulling like predictions, for example, when you're predicting, you are like you're taking your energetic body, you're like leaving this, and we're doing it all the time. I mean, I can give you guys a 3-second meditation and you'll go into the future. So you'll kind of leave your body, you'll go into the future, kind of figure some things out. But a lot of us get stuck there. So we like never bring the energy back into our physical body, which is why we can't manifest. So the future stays in the future. So for example, let's say I'm picturing you and me, we both have best-selling books and we're on stage and we're like at the top of our game as like thought leaders. I can see it, I believe it, I know it's like what we're meant to do. I'm meant to go into the future to like get the vibe, see like the beauty of going into the future is being able to be like, oh, when Erica has that best-selling book and when she's on stage, this is how she's showing up. this is the bullshit she no longer stands for. This is like what she does stand for. This is her new energy. This is her new vibe. You experience that, and then the idea is you come back into your present and you do your best to live into that energy of the future self. But I think a lot of times what we do is we go into the future, we love it because it feels amazing and we're dreaming about it, but we forget to bring our energy back into the physical, into our bodies, like really ground into that energy and be like, okay, now if today I needed to like kind of act like the future or bring some future, what food would I pick? It might be as simple as like my future self doesn't eat those bagels anymore, like I don't know, and actually that's how you collapse the future to the present. So as intuitives and as like sensitive people, we're constantly leaving the body to feel different things. Like even you might be trying to sense your boss's energy, or so you leave your body to do that, but we got to bring it back into the present and then use this. The reason we have like the spiritual information is because it's clues, it's wisdom, it's knowledge to help in the human game. So we have to like gather that wisdom that we're using by like floating around spiritually and then bring it into the present and act upon that like information and that wisdom. So that's something that like I just like figured out. I think that that's why people really connect to my work, because I'm both like intuitive and grounded, like very practical in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because speaking of gifts, like I understand I have an intuitive gift, and I knew early on I did not want to be used as like a psychic or as a magic 8-ball. And out of my respect for the gift is what made me realize like I'm not giving you a prediction or getting some psychic information for fun. I'm getting it because it's like a clue for you to like live into the life that you're meant to live. So out of respect for that gift, I'm going to make it practical, if that makes sense. If not, I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to use it. So I think, we all have that gift. We just got to like bring it back to the present. And you always want to like zoom in and zoom out. And that's also how we get out of our own way and our own head. Like, we get anxious and stuff like that because we're on the ground. But if you had a bird's eye view, what would you do? Just like a little tip, guys, one of my favorite practices. Well, first, going into the future, like I said, you can do that. Go see your future self. Really see what energy that future self has and different from the energy you have. So that's always a good little exercise to play with. But another one, when I feel like very stuck, let's say in my business or let's say something with the kids, I will actually visually like picture myself in my house. Like I'll imagine like if my house was a dollhouse and I'll like rip off the roof of the house, let's say. And I'll be like, okay, now we're going to go up into the sky. You're the bird now. And you're watching over your house and you're watching how everybody's moving. You're observing Nikki like work on her business. And you'd be surprised how much you'll learn from being unattached and from that bird's eye view. So I do this a lot with the kids and stuff because I'm so in it. I'm their mom. I have attachments and expectations and all these things. So you zoom out. So just picture wherever you live and zoom out as if you were watching like little dolls play on a stage, like a little Barbie house, like when you were a kid. And that is like very helpful.
So helpful.
Yeah.
This is a little off topic from what we're talking about, but you're giving such great rituals or practices. And I wanted to ask you about protecting energy. Do you believe we need to protect our energy?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay.
And it's like such an it's just like I even think I could totally be better at it. But yes, so especially people that work really any job because you're like around other people, or let's say I see this a lot like in healthcare, teachers, things like that. So being able to be like really as simply as just like imagining yourself in a little energetic bubble and stating what you're available for and what you're not available for. That's helpful.
Can you give an example?
So, let's say you go to work, you have this coworker who like just like loves to complain about the boss or something like that. And as much as you are also like annoyed at the boss and stuff, it's not really serving you. You're just like, this is not helping me. Like talking shit or complaining about this boss is like not helping me, but I I sit next to this girl at the office. I can't help it when she complains. I like, before I know it, I'm in on it as well. And it's like really brought me from like an energetic 7, I've dropped down to the ladder of like an energetic 4. And we don't want to vibrate at an energetic 4 because then we're going to manifest at an energetic 4. We want to vibrate at as high as we can so that we can manifest at from a higher, higher quality manifestations, right? Like what you're bringing into your reality. So as simple, even though it's like fun to talk shit and probably like gossip with that friend at work, it's actually like affecting you. Not only is it draining your energy, but it's affecting like your potency. So it's like you can't create as much as like you would want to because you're at a lower vibe. It's bringing down your vibe. So the idea is that like this about this person. So like next time you go to the office, like you're gonna be ready for it. You're like, okay, she's there. I can't do anything about her. Like nobody's gonna fire her, whatever. This like these conversations that we get into are not helpful. I'm energetically not available to jump into like her drama or to jump into those conversations. I'm only energetically available for things that are like raising my vibration, whatever. And actually, believe it or not, by like setting that intention, you're kind of creating like a little shield around your energetic boundary. So and sometimes, like, let's say, you're going to go see your parents, and sometimes it's hard for you to see your parents because there's a lot of like history there and you end up acting like your child self and you don't want to do that. Even setting that intention as well and being like, okay, we're going to show up like this. We're not available when mom makes fun of my eyebrows. I'm not going to, I'm not available for that. And you'd be surprised that people around you will shift and even like not bring you that energy. So that in itself is important. Also knowing sometimes you do have to go into some harsher energy. The work that we do, sometimes you're working with like one-on-one clients and you want to be able to like hold that space for them. Knowing that after that client, like I may need to go for a walk, or maybe I need to do some breath work, or I need to like reset my energy because it's never going to be perfect. Like we can't avoid harsh energy by any means, but having those practices to reset. So I live in nature, so I'll go for a hike, I'll do your breath work, I'll take a bath, like certain things that like help me to know that I need to like get back to my like default setting. Yeah. But I think that, yes, like energetic protection is so important. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's like the people we hang out with, it's the conversations that we're available for that are really draining us and like affecting us.
Yeah. And I think we become, as we do this work, we get so sensitive and instantaneously, like if I go engage in a conversation that I'm just not meant to, I will feel it immediately, like the impact of it. And I'm like, oh shit, like I need to know for next time. Don't even touch it.
And it's probably because like you're disrespecting yourself too, because you're probably like, that is not the conversations I want to have. That's not the life I want to live. And I just like crossed my own boundary in a way.
And also knowing that like the ripple, like the vibration continues to ripple out. So we have to that's been a focus of mine, just being so mindful about the words that I use, the actions I take, because everything will have an impact in some way, and being so intentional and like speaking when it's intentional and consciously rather than just to fill up space.
And did you think like media, that's kind of something that's been on my mind too. I'm like working out at the gym and I'm like, damn, I used to love this song, but this is like bad vibes for me, like the music or like the shows that we watch and stuff like that. I try to not be perfect because I think sometimes like a good trashy show, whatever, it might be like exactly like what you need to just actually to refresh your energy in a sense. But also noticing that it's not really just like the people or the places that we're at, that it's like the media that we're taking in.
Vinny gets so mad at me because he's like, I literally can't watch a movie with you. What happened to you? And I was with a bunch of our friends, like we were out with couples, and they were like, see, Erica can't watch that show either. See, Alex can't watch that show either. And we're all like, all the women are like so aware and sensitive. And the men are like, geez, like what happened to you? I can't even watch a cool movie with you anymore. I literally had to shut one off the other night because it like crossed my energetic boundary. I'm like, no, I will sit with this. I don't want that energy.
This is like a dream of mine that like I will partner with Sophie one day, who's my social girl here. I want to make like high vibe media, but like almost like a high vibe rom-com, or
Yeah.
like even can
Yeah.
we do a high vibe like action film too?
Yeah.
You know, like can we just like
Yeah.
make those a little bit more high vibe so we can actually
Totally.
consume them?
And we're seeing it already with music, right?
Yes,
We're seeing it
I
happen right
agree.
now with music. I have chills.
Yes.
The frequencies, it's so true. And it's really hard because some of the stuff we love and it's so fun. But then when I get a vibe and I'm like, it's not aligned, I'm like, that's it.
Yeah.
I will not listen. I will not tune in. That is it
And
for
it's
me.
sad because you want to.
I
mean, media is
know.
important. Like you need
Yeah.
to like take a break and be inspired and watch something, but it's also like, yeah, you're like sensitive to it.
Yeah, so true. The last question I wanted to ask you, and I know this because I did your soul reading method, which was amazing. So you really take us through the process of how you tune in to messages and how you receive. But my question here is, I know for myself, I will get random hits and I'm like, oh my gosh, like the other day I was cutting with this knife and I'm like, and I had a cleaning lady coming later, or cleaning lady. I'm like, I don't want this nice knife around because it's really sharp and God forbid, I don't want anyone getting hurt if she was cleaning it. I don't know why I got that hit. I took out another knife and as I was using the other knife, I cut my finger. I'm like, what the F was that? Like, I hope I saved her and just got like a little nick. Or did I instantly manifest because I was thinking about someone getting hurt from a knife and now I just did. Just weird things happen like that. Or like all of a sudden I'll see something on the counter and I'm like, if I don't move that, I know and I'll see the whole tape play through. So I get these little hits. But when you meet with people, you are really like having a flow of information come through. And like I said, I kind of know your process because I took the soul reading method, and anyone that really wants to become a reader and really activate their intuitive senses, they can do that. You still offer that program, right?
Yeah. And so that's so interesting. I'm always like curious, like chicken or the egg when it comes to like premonitions, you know, like are we manifesting? I would say that manifest happens on a little bit of a delay. So I kind of feel like I would say it's more of a premonition than it is a manifestation, because like manifesting takes a little bit of time. So I always find those like fascinating. I love those stories. And in what I'm really doing and what we can do to get better at our own intuition is like first to kind of understand that what's happening is that everything is energy, and energy has information in it. And when we like hold our focus on energy, we can get like the info that is there. Now, sometimes, you know, the story that Erica just shared about the knife, like, I don't know, is her dead grandmother like following her around and like gave her that tip. So it could be like the energy, right? Like the energy could be anywhere from a relative who has passed, who's hanging out you, because that's energy and they're communicating with you, to also being like, I'm staring at my dog. My dog doesn't talk, but has an energy, and I'm picking up what the dog is trying to tell me. So,
All the time with Bam
or
Bam.
even like, yeah, exactly. You know that I know you're familiar. Or like, let's say you walk into a room. It's a very physical thing, right? But that room carries energy, and maybe you walk into that room and you just like, you're kind of like sensing the person who just left, or maybe there was an argument, and you can pick up on it. So our intuition is coming from all sorts of places. And I think that's kind of like one of the first things that we have to understand. And then once you kind of decide where you want to pick it up from, it gets a little bit easier. You're like, okay, I want to pick it up from, I do love that my grandmother's with me and I feel like she chats with me and like that's who I'm focusing on. Like that's cool. Or also like your own ability to read energy. So a lot of times what I'm doing is reading energy. So I am like, if somebody gives me a sentence and there's like words in that sentence, it's like I can kind of pick up what's behind the sentence. Like what's the energy of those words? What's the energy of like the way she is saying it? Like I can almost like maybe put her on mute, but like kind of feel energetically like what she's saying. And that's where the information is coming from. So if we want to like practice on our own intuition, always like knowing that, you know, at first I know we all want to do it like walking down the street and getting like intuitive hits or whatever, but it's always better to set a little bit of time aside and really like specifically like maybe focus on a question. Like maybe you're just like, oh, I'm trying to find love, but I hate dating apps but I really want to be available for it. So like, please guide me. So maybe you're talking to God, maybe you're talking to like your angel. Like what are you connecting with? Getting a journal, because intuition comes through us, but ultimately we want a place to like drop it. So I still to this day like write my messages down because it's like coming through me, but I don't really understand it until it's like completely on the paper. So you can just like sit and write out that question, like, please guide me. Like, what would be like the next best step for me in my dating journey, even though, I don't want to do it the way that like a lot of people are doing it now. And maybe like decide who you're going to get that information from. You can get it from your higher self. You can get it from your future self. You can, again, an angel, whatever feels like you can't go wrong. But the reason I want you to like kind of decide where you're going to get the information from is because then you can like hold focus. So you're like, okay, I feel my higher self. She's a goddess version of me, whatever, it doesn't matter. And if I like close my eyes and I hold my focus on this like higher version of me, I ask that question. In that moment of focus, I feel like this is what I'm receiving. I'm going to write it down on the paper. So you're able to be like a little bit more accurate. And then as you build that muscle, ultimately, like you're not going to need to do it during meditation or with paper. You're going to be able to like, walk through life, like picking up those messages. Yeah. But it does require focus and it does require like a point of focus. And then sometimes if you say like, oh, I just want to read the energy of, I don't know, this guy on my Bumble profile or whatever it may be, like you can do that as well. Like if you would just, there's a difference between judging and reading energy. So we'll have to kind of get past that. But just like energetically like holding your focus and just really writing down what you feel is coming through. Yeah. And coming from like a place of love. And you'd be surprised. Like we all have it within us. We just have to train ourselves to get more focused. And yeah. Do you feel more intuitive these days?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the soul reading, I was so excited to be part of soul reading method because I felt like it would really have me hone in on what I always felt I had access to, but didn't know sometimes what it was. I remember when I was younger, I didn't know what it was that I was feeling or receiving, or like sometimes I feel like you built something that's structured but with so much flow, because it's something like intuition, which is absolute flow, but you really make it so tangible and really showing the other person that it's in there and ways of accessing it, different structures to implement. And I felt like you gave a lot of flexibility too, like finding what works for you as a person, but also given choices of like what the space looks like when you're going into the Akashic records or whatever it may be. You're able to really teach that in such a strong way.
Thank you. You're such a good student. I remember.
And thank you. Thank you. I loved it. So what are you offering right now? Because if the community members want to know more about it and go deeper with you.
So I have the podcast,
I'm
which
obsessed.
Is like super fun, soul-led living. That right now is like my baby. I do Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays are just like general messages. And it's such a fun show, guys. It's kind of like I'll do like 5 messages about your future or whatever. And it's so crazy how I can't stop getting messages about how many people are like, why are you reading me like completely? And I'm like, I don't know. We're all connected. And I think whoever finds the episode is meant to find it. And then on Thursdays, I do business episodes. So if you're like running a small business, thinking about a business, you'll also get a lot of, we did a super fun episode recently on the energy of consistent income, and people really love that. So I just feel into like, okay, what does it feel like to have consistent income? What are those messages? And it will like really help you in like your manifesting process basically, and helping you. The idea is like you go into the podcast, you turn on your own intuition, and you're like really in tune to like what messages are for you. Not all of them are going to be for you, but some of them are. So I would say that's like the most fun right now. I'm working on something new about discovering your gifts and your talents and monetizing them. So I feel very blessed. I'm sure you feel blessed too, to be like, I found something that I love that's like really true to who I am. It's truly like a gift that God gave me. I obviously like strengthened it with time, and I get to make my life around it. Like what a blessing. And that's really something I want to give back. So I'm currently working on something like that, but I don't have it like fully done yet.
So exciting.
Yeah.
I know. I listen to your podcast all the time. I can't believe you're doing 2 a week. It's amazing. But as an avid listener, I'm so excited because every time I'm like going for my walk these days, it's not every day because of the weather.
Yeah.
So now every time I go for a walk, there's a new podcast to listen to. And I'm like, Nikki just flowing. And it's so true. The hits are incredible. It always resonates so much. I'm just like very selective where my energy goes. And this is my number one podcast because of the information you share, the light that's within you, and the space you share from.
Yeah, I definitely wanted it to be something like that, like high vibe. And I remember, so one of the hard things about like embracing this gift of intuition, while I definitely see a lot of like dark things, I'm also like seeing like the potential. And my mom specifically like was really scared about me doing this work. And one of the things she would tell me would be like, oh, Nikki, you like, in Spanish, but like in a way she would say like I was like blowing like steam up people's asses basically. She's like, you can't just like, tell people everything's gonna be okay. And I and that helped me be like very accurate, very professional, very good, like that kind of criticism. But when I came up with the podcast, I was like, I really just wanted to be a place where like you can live into that potential. And what's funny is that I don't know, when we set like a goalpost like that, like you're going to live into it and it has like a high vibration to it. And I think that's why it's working. It's been one of the most successful things I've done so far. It really has had like an instant success. So I'm really grateful for it.
It's amazing. I'm so grateful for it too. Truly. Thank you so much for being here. Where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me at anything Nikki Novo. So I'm on Instagram or YouTube or anything like that. And then the podcast is called Soul Led Living, or you can just search my name and you'll find it.
We'll also put everything in the show notes. I also have an affiliate code for Soul Led Living, so I could share that as well.
Exactly.
And they can find all your courses.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed the episode. This could have easily been a 3 to 4 hour episode. We could have chatted for days, but maybe that just means she'll come back and we have plans of me going on her podcast at some point. So we'll have more time to have these conversations and for you guys to be in on them as well. If you want to find out any information about Nikki, you can check out the show notes. We linked her socials, her website, her programs, and you could check them out there. But I want to thank you so much for being interested in these conversations, wanting to go deep with us, and for being here today. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time. Satnam.